This is ClueCon Weekly, the official FreeSWITCH web show produced and broadcasted directly from FreeSWITCH. ClueCon Weekly features live updates from the FreeSWITCH developers and presentations from various pioneers of communications technology. ClueCon Weekly is brought to you by FreeSWITCH Solutions, the official consulting firm of the FreeSWITCH open source project. Get help from the experts. Visit freeswitch.com. ClueCon, the premier technology conference for telecom, WebRTC, IoT, and all things maker. ClueCon is held every year in Chicago, Illinois, and offers an all-day hackathon and 4 days of technology-rich presentations from developers around the world. Learn more at ClueCon.com or call 877-748-CLUE.
All right, guys, welcome to ClueCon Weekly. Today, we've got Dan Bogos from the CGRateS Project. He's going to be joining us talking about that. So you guys stand by for that. Come up next, we got Miss Kathleen King with some news and announcements. How you doing, Kathleen?
I'm doing really well. Thanks, Ken. First, make sure you join us at IT Expo in February in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We are able to offer a full free training, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can sign up for this training on the IT Expo website here in the coming weeks. It'll be on Tuesday, February the 13th. Don't forget to save the date for ClueCon 2018. It'll be earlier this year, taking place from July 23rd to July 26th, so mark your calendars. And check out our new tips and tricks playlist on our YouTube channel. We've added a new video for your viewing pleasure, so make sure you subscribe. And a friendly reminder that Thursday, November 23rd, that is tomorrow, is a U.S. holiday. The team will be spending time with their families and eating loads of good food. So we'll be back bright and early Monday morning to resume regular working hours. And we'll be taking questions during a segment during ClueCon Weekly. If you have any questions you'd like a team member to answer, please submit them to our Facebook, Twitter, HipChat, IRC, or our mailing list, and we'll see if we can get them on air and get a live answer from a team member. And be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and sign up for our mailing list for all the latest and greatest FreeSWITCH and ClueCon news. And stay tuned next week. We have Mark Crane from Fusion PBX. And that's it for me, Ken.
All right, cool. Thank you. So we've got Michael Malrutis. He's going to be joining us now. Mike, how you doing today, sir?
Good, thank you, and happy Thanksgiving, guys. So in Community Corner, I believe we have a question. And the question is, how does one debug Verto?
Actually, debugging Verto is pretty easy. There's not a console command for turning Verto debugging on, but if you look in the standard FreeSWITCH configs, under autoload configs folder, and then the verto.conf.xml file, there is a debug setting in there. Simply turn it on. Once you turn it on, you'll get all kinds of fun output into your logs and on your console, provided you're running, at debug log level, to find out what's going on. That will give you a ton of information about whether you're failing like certificates or authentication or what. So you can see what FreeSWITCH is doing and go from there. And that's between that and then in your browser using the JavaScript console debugger that's built into your browser. And that depends on which browser you're using. So you guys that are web devs know where to find those. And you can get a lot of information there also.
So you can see a lot of information in the inspector in some of the browsers, and then the debug output. What type of thing do we see? Stuff like SDP in there?
We'll see stuff like SDP in there. We'll see stuff like the authentication messages and the different methods that calls back into FreeSWITCH. We're setting up or tearing down a call or putting it on hold.
And so the SDP for RTC is very different than from traditional voice. What would we see that's different within the SDP?
SDP is not real. SDP itself is session description protocol, and that's the same SDPs that you're used to seeing in SIP. You'll actually see in WebRTC also. The only difference is with WebRTC, we'll typically see ICE candidates in there.
Yeah.
And ICE candidates are typically machines on a network behind NAT. It may have 3 or 4 network or virtual network interfaces in it, and all those ICE candidates help the two endpoints with WebRTC determine, okay, what are the possible paths between, the FreeSWITCH box and my web browser, or between web browser and web browser. So those things help kind of figure out. But as far as SDP goes, you still have the same, the rest of the stuff that you're used to seeing in SIP, for you guys that are very familiar with, debugging media in SIP, you'll see that same kind of thing with WebRTC. So you still have your M lines, your O lines, your C lines, all those different things that determine, what IP, what port are we going to be sending it, and also what codecs are we allowed to use? Things like Opus, G711, Sign Linear, and that all works the same way. So it's no real big difference there between WebRTC SDPs and SIP SDPs. That's why you see a lot of things like some of the early WebRTC implementations are literally just the WebRTC transport with SIP laid on top of it for signaling. So it's a lot of the same thing.
Well, thank you, Ken.
All right, we'll go back to you, Michael.
So today we have Dan Bogos from CGRateS.
Hey guys, I don't know, do you see me, or at least do you hear me? Yeah, there we go. So before anything, please accept my thanks for having us here and also for organizing this wonderful conference. We are fans. So,
well, thank you for coming on the call. We very much appreciate that.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. I prepared some slides to show you guys a bit, or to talk about a bit what we have been doing lately. We are often participants to ClueCon in August, so we have presented every year most of the stuff there as well. Here are some things we have finished, and I thought we have finished quite lately. And I thought it will be good for community to hear about them, and also ready to take your questions at any point in time. I'm more happy if you stop me also during slides, and we make a bit more interactive discussion on this.
So we've been very impressed with your project.
Thank you.
I understand it's written in Go.
Yep.
And Go is great when it comes to concurrency, and it was originally written by Google, right?
Yeah. So it's a funny thing because I don't know how many they know. We are one of the oldest projects in Go. We started when Go was in weekly release mode in 2011. And we were quite lucky with our choice. Actually, my colleague was the one who very well picked the language. And ever since, we were very happy with the evolution of Go. So the project evolved together with Go.
So you have a couple of slides for us.
Yeah, that's right. So if you guys can, yeah, okay. So my talk is a bit centered around traffic control, statistics, and channel management, because this is what we have been lately working on. 1 second. Okay, so we as a company, if you don't know that already, we are located in Germany, in Bavaria. We got quite some experience with VoIP environment. We did both wholesale and retail, and we got quite some experience with real-time processing. And I think we understand by now the seriousness of light system outages. Regarding CGRateS, for those not aware about it, it's a real-time enterprise billing engine, what we call. It's an enterprise because it's very customizable. It's more like a framework, so you can use components based on your own needs. It is not oriented towards specific business rules. It's very generic, so you can very easily adapt it towards your own business rules. It's pluggable, so you should be able to easily integrate it in your infrastructure. It should be able to take new components easily. For example, adding a new VoIP switch, SMS service, data stream. It should be easy to do that. It's also designed to be non-intrusive, so you don't need to route traffic through our switch or stuff like that. We actually communicate in real time with your own switch. The decision regarding on allowing CGRateS to control your calls, it's up to you. It's in your hands. For example, with FreeSWITCH, we do it via dial plan. It's fully open source. We don't have any private repository. We don't have any private plugins. We consider that the community is a valuable asset of ours, so we want to give back the community. They are very valuable in terms of quality assurance to us as well. In terms of features, we are ready to listen them. Performance oriented, it being real time, we need to be fast. We have some specific things built in, like our own written advanced cache system. It does this LRU records as well as TTL, which are the timed expired ones. Everything what we do, via Go, we do it asynchronously, so we should in theory never block. Even if we block a micro thread. So if by any chance we lock an account, only that call state blocks, the rest works, or it should work. It's a test-driven development. We got last time when we were counting, like a few months ago, like 2,000 tests as part of the build system. So on every commit, Travis will pick up and it will analyze our tests again, and it will not allow us to make mistakes. It saved us a lot of time due to that, and we are also more confident because of that. The project has a modular architecture. It should be cloud ready. It's based on microservices. Everything what we do is via RPC APIs. It's easy to enhance by rewriting specific components. So you take a server's out and you put your own one if you're not happy with our own one, or if you want to enhance and you want to do it in different language. It's feature rich. We do what people are calling online charging system, multi-tenant, rating engine with a lot of functionality, account balance management with bundles. We are very good at that. A particular industry interested about CGRateS is the mobile world. So we run in MVNO sites, and lately we got some traction in MNOs. So there are various use cases which you can have for using CGRateS. We do session or event charging with balance reservation and refunds. We have a CDR server which does logging and processes various types of CDRs. Fraud detection, we focus a lot on this part as well. With automatic mitigation, I have been talking at ClueCon many times about this. LCR with bundles and quality-based LCR based on stats. Traffic statistics with pattern monitoring. I'll be talking a few words on that as well. We have diameter servers, radius server. We have process templates, so we should be in theory standard agnostic. So you implement your diameter processing logic in your own templates based on your own logic, so you can shift between supporting various standards. Resource allocation controller. It's again something I'll talk in the next slides. We should be plug and play to major open source communication projects. Asterisk, FreeSWITCH, Kamaili, OpenShips. Please note they are alphabetically ordered, not in the based on any kind of ratings. We have built-in high availability, and we also educate to be agile in developing new features. So we are eager to hear about new features you are missing in CGRateS. A bit on evolution, you see the first commits were around 2012, and ever since our feature list increases. So we got around 160,000 lines of code today. You wanted to ask something, or am I talking too fast?
No, it's wonderful.
Okay. Okay, then I'll continue regarding FreeSWITCH integration. We integrate bidirectionally, so we are almost like a FreeSWITCH module. We talk via the socket with FreeSWITCH. We process the events which are here for our own interest, which is channel park, used to authorize the calls. So the call comes in via dial plan. We park it. We do our own magic, checking whether the account exists, whether it's allowed to access resources, whether it's allowed to do this routing. And as soon as we decide that all clear, we unpark the call, forwarding back into dial plan. Then a channel answer, we will start our debit loops, which will run at every X seconds. And if you ran out of credit, we kill the call from outside via scheduled hang up, or hang up command. Scheduled hang up will be at the beginning of the call during channel park. When we started, there was no library to communicate with FreeSWITCH, so we wrote our own one. If you find it useful, we are happy if you use it. It's MIT, so do whatever you are pleased with it. We have decoupled CDR processing as well. So after monitoring the calls in real time, we can also be sure that we have done the right thing when we receive the CDR via a number of modules which we already support from FreeSWITCH. To understand a bit how we organize things, I have done a drawing. So you see our CDR server, for example, sits in the middle, and we can receive events via a number of different interfaces. CGRateS comes from Session Manager, and this is the one talking to FreeSWITCH. But we can also receive CDRs generically from, I don't know if you get it from your suppliers and you want to do billing assurance parallel with them, you can import them using the CDRC component, or diameter server receiving events, or radius server. And we have also other generic API via JSON RPC in. As soon as the CDR it's in the CDR server, it will pass it to some subsystems, what we call. This can be standalone servers, so they can be split or spread over your network, or they can be in process. If you want to be faster and spare the RPC call over network, which sometimes it's few milliseconds, you can communicate in process the same as you communicate outside of process. So you communicate with alias for aliasing some information. You can download extra information from user profiles. And then when you are ready with request, you can pass it to RALs for rating and accounting. And you can also pass it to statistics server. And you can also store if you want. If you don't want to store, you can export the already rated CDR to the server of your choice. You can do that via a number of different transports, and whether you can pass it to RabbitMQ or pass it out via HTTP JSON. In between, you can also pass it to thresholds for checking, detecting fraud or giving bonuses, because if you have a lot of usage on accounting, you can give back bonuses to your accounts based on their traffic, and all this configured in thresholds. Also, resources is reporting to thresholds, so you can detect abnormal usage of resources as part of your fraud detection again. Once the thresholds are hit, there will be action triggered, so you can be informed, or your NOC can be informed. For example, LCR, it's reporting some routes which are not correct. They can also import, or stats, calculating ASR, which is dropping under a critical value. Thresholds can detect that and inform your NOC. So that would be about how we have organized things. When it comes to using CGRateS as online charging system, you have there a lot of functionality. You have ways to charge, I think, every nanosecond in a call differently if you like to. So we are very verbose on that, and you can also schedule changing pricing in the future. You can consume out of bundles. You can have unlimited bundles, so you can have minutes per destinations, money per destinations, and all sorts of combinations like that. Once you get rid of accounting, you can also do concurrent session handling. So you can reserve balance in chunks of debit interval. When the call finishes, you can pass back the money into balances, the extra, the ones which are not consumed. We can also do debit slips. So if you have a debit interval of, I don't know, 10 seconds, and the charging is per minute, we are smart enough to say, okay, I don't debit for the next 50 seconds because I already debited 1 minute. Regarding CDR server, I told you it can do this rating queues, what we call. It can push the CDRs already rated. So it takes few milliseconds between receiving the CDR row from FreeSWITCH and pushing it out to your HTTP server already rated. So it's already tagged with the price. And you can import CDRs via CSV, fixed with value, XML, out of offline. LCR, again, what we like, we support QoS thresholds. So you order the suppliers, I don't know, based on list cost, and then you only send the traffic to the suppliers which are matching specific quality which you set. So you will not, and you will automatically adapt yourself based on the LCR will be adaptive enough based on the quality which your suppliers are providing. And there is also load distribution and some other strategies. Filters. This is something we have been working lately. This is something generically which you can now apply to a number of modules. It's generically applying, so you can pass any kind of events you like from outside, and the filters will process them. It's also adaptive, so the filter can, when the request is received, the filter can query external service. So it will, for example, request comes in, you can check the stats of your supplier to see if the account has enough money, or to see if the thresholds are hit or something like that. So it's
really cool.
It starts being cool. Yeah, we are still in some early stage because we just finished this, but we are very excited about this. It's very easy to expand them. So each filter type supports its own logic. You can have all these regeps and match at beginning, at the end, check resources, and all other stuff. And it's also performance oriented. So we have some string-based types which are indexed, and then we don't longer, if you have millions of filters, we only check the ones which are matching the event based on the string indexes. Resources, this is something you can use to control the allocation of your resources for your customers. or your suppliers. So you can have something like how many channels per destination or per supplier a customer can have. Then also you can, based on resources, you can change the price list based on how many resources your customer is using. So if he's using 10 channels, you give him, I don't know, a price. If he's using between 10 and 20, you change the price, and this will automatically in real time adapt. So I think this is also something pretty cool. It's again performance oriented. You know, all what we do, it's in cache, so we don't have a database query in real time. The resources are also self-healing. If you don't get the feedback from the switch or the channel hangs or something, the resource can automatically expire. So the channel is passed back to the pool just because you configure that this channel will not stay longer than 1 hour busy or something. And we have integrated usage thresholds, as I showed you in the drawing. Just that you understand, resource service is a standalone server, so you can communicate with it via your own API. So you don't need to use CGRateS, you don't need to use CGRateS billing or authorization. You can just use a standalone resource service with CGRateS and call its APIs. For example, this API call will report a usage for account 1001, 1002 dialing destination 1002, something like I was looking in my tests. Because this I captured from a live test. So this is a real API call. And based on that, we will book a resource. You can also tell how many resources you want to book. As soon as it's done, the server will reply with the best match resource, with the winning resource. You can have more resources in a pool. For example, calls to US and calls to North America. So you can make prioritization, so you can offer 10 calls to US and 100 calls to North America. So also your customers calling Canada will match North America, but customers calling to US will match both of them. So we keep them both updated in real time, and the winning resource will come back here. And this is also the trick how you can change the price list, because the winning resource will report here, and you know on how on what level to charge. The stats, they compute a lot of metrics in real time. For example, ASR, ACD, ACC, this ACC we came up, it's average call cost for the CDRs in that particular queue. TCC, total call cost for the cumulated value in that queue. These queues are in memory, so they never hit the disk. They are extremely fast. You don't need to query them or query them on disk. I know billing systems doing these stats based on queries to MySQL, so it takes like 15 minutes to get a real stat for the last 1 hour, because you might be having a few 100,000 of CDRs.
Not impacting the disk is definitely a great feature, especially with some of the more modern some of the more modern drives. They have the tendency to fail with a lot of writes.
I agree. So we do all these calculations in memory, and we also support storing them, but this we do asynchronously. So you can configure to backup on disk regularly, and we do that as well. So they will be available upon restart. And it's also communicating with the thresholds. So this is a sample API call against stats. It's also different than resources, and it's also a standalone server. So you can use stats outside of rating or outside of resource monitoring, just sending by these APIs to it. So this is a sample API call reporting the account with some usage. And you can put, because you see this is a generic event, it's a hash map, so you can put any fields you like here, and based on this you can make mapping to your stats calculations. So it's dynamic. And this is an API call querying the stats. This is also interesting, so you can see how easy it is to grab the stats back, maybe to display it on web interface or simply on a CLI, I don't know. You just provide the ID of your stats queue. If you see here, the stats queue is not reported because this process event can hit maybe thousands of different stats queues. You can have thousands or I don't know, let's say hundreds of thousands of stats queues, because these all are objects in memory. So after when you want to query it, you specify the ID of your stats queue, and then it reports back the stats which you have configured that, because this content is also dynamic. It depends on which metrics you want to calculate for a stats queue. So this is reporting an average call cost of, I don't know, $61.5, an average call duration of 1 minute and 30 seconds, and ASR of 66, and some PDD, total call cost, and total call duration. So you have aggregated at any time. Based on the filters, you also control which CDRs are going into a stats queue. So you can tell, okay, I want the CDRs for the last 1 hour for this customer. And thresholds will monitor these things. So we'll monitor resources, accounts, CDRs. In the end, it will monitor what you like to monitor, because it's also another standalone system. So it can monitor any number of values you like. It has some protection on false negatives. So you can tell, I want to be notified, or I want threshold to fire up only when 100 CDRs are inside, because if you give me a warning or a critical for 1 CDR ASR dropping, it's not really useful. And you can also have action flooding, so it will not flood you, like every X seconds when the thresholds are hit again, flooding you with emails or HTTP requests or something. You can tell whether it's a recurrent, and you can also tell him to sleep. So announce me, but then wait 1 hour until I react. And if I don't react in 1 hour, inform me again, and stuff like that. It's also doing backups, so it's available on restart. And it can execute any number of actions, which can be synchronous and asynchronous. Another sample APIs, because again, it's a standalone server, you can feed information out from the whole web with your own events. And this is a sample of what we call event type stat update, but this event type is not a requirement. It's just we are using this field name event type to match with the threshold config which you upload via CSV or something. And this is reporting that the stats daily DE, it has reached a total cost duration of 3 hours and 1 second. And based on this, threshold will check if it needs to fire or not. If it's still acceptable, then it will not do nothing. It will ignore it. And you can also see a result one. It's reporting how many thresholds were hit via this event. If any interested of that information. So I try to put as compressed information as possible, because I know sometimes I talk too much. So
I have some questions.
Please do that.
From let's say a user of the FreeSWITCH community, from a frictionless install perspective, what would be their best way to get CGRateS up and running and integrated into FreeSWITCH?
Okay, so first, if you want to learn about integrating CGRateS and FreeSWITCH, we have provided a tutorial based on integration between CGRateS and FreeSWITCH. So you can download our sample configs and you can experiment with that. So this would be the easiest way to learn. And then once you are ready, you need to install CGRateS, whether you do it on the same machine or a separate machine. You can do it. We provide Debian packages. You can do also out of sources if you like to, but normally we provide both release package as well as from time to time package, the ones which we consider mature enough. Our master should be, or we make efforts to be as stable as possible, because we run sometimes master in production. And normally, since we are a fairly small team, we focus a lot on developing on master. We try even now since a while to do a new release out, but since we were having a lot of integration to be done and so on, it was keep postponed. But we are making big efforts to do the release. Many people are waiting already. So to answer your question, Debian or sources.
And so what's the methodology that it ties in? Like, how does it actually connect in, and what happens? Like, from a call flow perspective, what's the first? Let's say a call comes in. What do we see from a call flow perspective, and what's happening? How does the interactions occur between FreeSWITCH and CGRateS?
Okay, so for prepaid calls, because you can do both offline billing, like for your wholesale, out of CDRs, and you can also do online charging based on real-time events via socket. So I'm talking now about prepaid, the real-time. You can communicate via the socket. So FreeSWITCH runs, and then CGRateS comes up and connects to FreeSWITCH socket. And from that moment, it's able to receive events. In your dial plan, you will be configuring some channel variables which CGRateS understands. For example, CGR request type to specify it's a prepaid account. Then CGR account if you don't want to use the username, because we also have some defaults which we understand. So once we see this CGR request type, then we say, okay, this Spark is for us. So we get the request to process it. Once the Spark is done, then we reply back with, we put back the call into dial plan via the same event socket. And then your call will continue as it was. So we only kind of block it at beginning, because we need to make sure, this is a security issue for us. We need to make sure that the account exists and has enough funds and it's enabled, it was not hacked, and so on. So that's the only point in time when we block the call. So to wait for authorization.
So for prepaid, it minimally affects the call flows. And then for postpaid, there's no effect on the call flow at all.
Exactly. And based on very smart decisions which you guys took when you developed the Park application, it should, in theory, also not block your FreeSWITCH server, because Park, it's a nice way to put the call in a non-blocking state, only blocking from the point of signaling, but not blocking the process.
So you mentioned almost like multi-tiered hybrid plans earlier. One of the things I see a lot in terms and conditions in a lot of various VoIP providers is it'll say unlimited calling, right? And then if you read the terms and conditions, it'll say like 500 minutes per account or something like that. And so essentially, people believe that they're getting this enormous value, but realistically, they aren't. And so it seems that your software really has the ability to implement these things, because a lot of times when I see those terms and conditions, I don't think they actually are implementing them. It's really just something that they have from a legal perspective.
Yeah, they call it here fair use policy.
Yeah.
So, yes, in CGRateS you can do both, like monitoring in real time for fair use policy, like a normal prepaid account, or you can go and implement that in the thresholds, which are monitoring your stats, and then you can react there. So the thresholds can disable your account from outside or even internally. So, or not disable your account, but disable your bundle, which offers you this fair number of minutes, fair use policy stuff. So it's easy to do that.
And then what about other platforms? There's ways to connect into other soft switches as well.
Yes. So as I told you during my slides, we support Asterix, and we support also Camaillio and OpenSIPs. OpenSIPs we do quite deep, because OpenSIPs have written their own dedicated module to communicate with CGRateS. So it gets very easily there, very easy, because you don't need to do any other steps than calling a function.
So just basically putting in an IP address and a port.
Yeah, exactly. And then activate it in the routing script.
Okay, so I think at this point we'll start taking questions from the community. And we're accepting questions via YouTube, IRC, and HipChat channels.
I'm ready for it. Hit me.
All right, so I've got a question for Dan.
Yes.
So Dan, why Go?
As I told, by that time I was not really experienced with Go, but my colleague was very good in picking new languages. He was actually the one who introduced me to Python as well, like when I finished school in 2002. And that was very early days for Python also. So, and you see where Python is today. So he was really good in choosing languages. So on the other hand, why Go today is because of so easily to do asynchronous stuff. So, and also performant. It's fairly performant. Of course, you know, they compare sometimes with Java, sometimes with C++. It's, I think, comparable. Maybe it's not yet there because, you know, in optimizing Java, people have put, I don't know how many millions and billions in investment. Go is still pretty early there, but I think it competes very, very nice with them. And in terms of being asynchronous and how easily you work with asynchronously, it's a winner. So I would choose again. So it's, you know, people are fan of Erlang. I would say Go is it's also a modern Erlang.
When comparing it to Erlang, would you say, which one would you say is easier to deal with as far as writing?
Well, I cannot claim that I'm a Erlang developer, so I cannot really compare them. But based on research, I have been instructed that Go is easier to learn and deal with it because it has we have new colleagues and they have picked very fast, impressively fast Go. So they were like, without knowing other languages before or knowing just at a school level, they picked it like in a week they could write code already. So it's very fast to learn.
So both of those languages, they have very similar garbage collection, right?
Yeah, I can only tell about Go. So yeah, Go has garbage collection and it does it well. over the years, we didn't experience serious things. So there was some time when we found that something is not okay with garbage collection. And when we researched, that problem was already fixed in like the next release. So we didn't have any problem or any serious problems with Go over the years. They are pretty stable in fixing that.
So you use extensive management of caching, right? And if
Yes.
I remember, we had a conversation at one point where you actually completely authored the caching system.
Yes, so we wrote our own caching system. You can find it in our GitHub, CGRateS/LRU, and it's basically a hash map with some indexes, with some what we call slices, some lists of stuff which are making cache faster, and also keeping the expirations inside. So there are some linked lists as well there. So based on this receipt.
What's the advantage over that? What's the advantage over that as opposed to using Redis or Memcache?
Yeah, for us, the advantage is that we don't query network. We don't go over network to query the cache. So Redis, I think it's maybe better than our cache, but to Redis, we need to go over the network. And, in a call, we need to do like maybe hundreds of queries, because we need to see every X seconds maybe, or we need to calculate. We support unlimited bundles, and each bundle can have its own price. So during the call, we need to do a lot of splits and queries. And by querying Redis, this will slow down considerably. It will not allow us to guarantee the response time anymore. With internal cache, it's a matter of nanoseconds to query it.
So, if you what would you perceive as your average customer?
Okay, so
typical customer, I guess, is the best way to say that.
Yeah, I can tell you what are our typical customers today. So we, as I told you, we are popular in Europe. I don't know if popular, but we have customers in MVNO's world, because for them it's hard to find a real-time rating system which is accessible like ours, and also which has the features which we have developed. In terms of bundles, it's hard to find, especially in open source, something which can help you over there. So due to bundles, we do more mobile world. Our let's say flagship customer, just that you know, it's an MVNO here in Europe, and they run 600,000 prepaid customers on CGRateS. So this peaks sometimes at 50,000 simultaneous sessions, and for example, on New Year Eve, they peak about 500 calls per second. Wow. So it's quite a lot of traffic with CGRateS needs to do, and we do it with one session manager.
So that's typically the interface there is typically diameter, right? Yeah,
they work with, they talk diameter with us, and then diameter talks to session manager generic, and then session manager to RALs and so on. So it's like a network, and you can do easily the high availability. For example, we had a non-protected RPC call, so it was not really our fault, but via their diameter, they received a call duration of like few years. And since we split in time spans, splitting this increased the memory so much that at some point we got kicked out by the operating system that we were overloading the memory. And based on high availability, the system was simply swapping on another unit and starting calculating there and recovering this unit. So they didn't feel in real time. And to be honest, we have this system in production since more than a year, and they never wake us up. So this is quite some achievement because we are afraid about, we don't like working overnight, so especially me, and they never woke me up. And so they never had a failure because, you know, it's a pretty big company, so they would for sure wake me up if CGRateS goes down.
Okay, so the hour's starting to round, so we got to wrap this up a little bit. One last question, and so
yes,
since
please.
we're on the topic of MVNOs, and essentially for people that don't know what an MVNO is, it's a mobile operator. On a very simple level, right?
Yes.
So do you actually do rating and ranking for data as well?
Yes, and more people started to pick us up there as well, because we integrate both, not both, but all SMS, data charging, call charging, or even abstract products charging in one interface. So it depends on the request type. And one more thing to mention there, we are not only in MVNOs. So we have also wholesale customers which are using us, community members doing wholesale. So both wholesale and retail are covered with this system. And one more thing, which I realized lately, sorry, this will be the last idea. We have people start using us, not for the real-time part, but for example, for the revenue assurance. So they do parallel billing in CGRateS with their existing one, because it's so easy to trigger thresholds with CGRateS. So you do parallel monitoring of the call, build them in parallel, and then send yourself emails when something is not right. So we do the job of previously few people in a team analyzing spreadsheets.
And that's, you know, when you're dealing with wholesale voice services, without any question, that's an integral component to the success of the company, without any question. Because one of the things you have to make sure is that you know, not only are you billing your clients properly, but that your underlying carriers are billing you properly. Because when you're working with small margins, it can become very challenging. You get hurt very easily. But more than anything, I wanted to say Happy Thanksgiving for those of the people that are in the U.S., of course. And
I wish I was there.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to have you on the show. And Ken, back to you.
Thank you, Michael, by the way, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, Dan. Great to have Dan Bogos on here again and hear about CGRateS. Again, Dan, thanks very much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. Michael, great job today. We've been having a lot of fun here now. Michael joined us on the team, so I want to say a big thanks for him because he's putting a lot of work in behind the scenes, guys. Don't forget to join us next week. We're going to have Mark Crane from the Fusion PBX project. We'll be right here at noon Central Wednesday. So you guys join us then, and we'll see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, guys.
You've been watching ClueCon Weekly. Tune in every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, or visit us online. Please follow the FreeSWITCH team on Twitter and Facebook by visiting our site at freeswitch.org.
All right, guys, and we're clear. Dan, everyone, thank you very much for coming in and joining us today. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you also, guys. You're great. You didn't kill me there.
Well, thank you for coming.